So we're going to start with NSF, followed by the Environmental Protection Agency, followed by the Department of Homeland Security, and then NASA. After that will come NIH. Following that will be Air Force Office of Scientific Research, and finally, the Office of Naval Research. So what I want to do is introduce to you Jean Feldman from the National Science Foundation, who's going to provide our first update. Jean, take it away.
Thanks, Michelle. It's great to be here. I missed the last session, so I'm delighted to be back and providing you with what's going on at NSF. Next slide, please. So there's some topics we're going to discuss today in my 15 minutes or so. And I just want to give a polite reminder for those that will look at these slides, and some of them will say, well, geez, haven't we heard that? And some of these slides you have seen before as part of Jeremy Leffler's NSF update at the last FDP meeting. So in order to be inclusive, I have all of the details in this presentation, but I will not be covering all of it because some of this information has already been presented to you. So I'm just going to really be highlighting some of the new information or things that have changed since the last NSF update. Next slide, please. So of course, it is our annual PAP guide time, NSF 23-1, and here on this slide is the anticipated timeline. The document is over at OMB as we speak, and they are permitted 30 days, and sometimes they take more, sometimes they take less time than that. So it is our intention to post it in the Federal Register on the NSF website in October, and it becomes effective in January of 2023. That effective date is going to be one that I want you to pay close attention to, because there are some updates to that for certain parts of the PAP guide that I think you will be very pleased to see that NSF has taken action. So next slide, please. Well, obviously, one of the biggest one of the biggest items that we have been working on for many, many years. And you know what? It's time already. So we are transitioning from Fastlane to research.gov. Our numbers continue to increase significantly in terms of usage. We're very excited about that because it means that the community will indeed be ready to use research.gov when that transition happens. And I have a slide or a couple of slides later on about that. We also have in this PAP guide use of broad agency announcements, BAAs, and the BAA management system, BAM. And I want to make the point on here that this is a new type of funding opportunity. And these are currently used by other agencies to solicit research proposals. And it, again, is new for NSF. We have used a couple of them. The most highly visible is, of course, the research innovation engines out of our new TIP directorate. And there is a corresponding system to go along with that. Now, folks have said, why? Why? You have research.gov. Well, part of the reason is that NSF is greatly, because of the TIP directorate and some other directorates as well, are broadening the eligibility categories that folks are used to seeing. So we've got now much more usage of for-profits, state and locals, tribal governments. So they aren't as used to or as familiar with NSF as many of you are, and NSF systems. And so this is a first effort to bring them in the mix. Of course, the BAM will evolve over time. Use of concept outlines and the new prospect tool. Some of our funding opportunities may require submission of something called a concept outline. And some require a submission of a concept outline. Those that absolutely require planning, rapid, eager, raised, where you really have to be in touch with the program officer prior to submission of the proposal. And that saves you time and it saves our program officers time, because the primary purposes are really to ensure that the concept being proposed by the prospective PI is appropriate for the proposal type or funding opportunity. We really do look at this as a way to reduce administrative burden. One of the things that we heard in the concept in the comment process, however, was a lot of questions about concept outlines, a lot of questions about the new tool. And so what we have done was listen actually to those comments that you gave us, and we have softened the language so that you could use either the prospect tool or an email process to submit those concept outlines, and you only must use prospect if the funding opportunity specifically requires you to do so. So again, we listen to your concerns and we are addressing those. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest changes in the PAP guide is a proposed new document as a supplementary document called Plan for Safe and Inclusive Field, Vessel, and Aircraft Research. PSI, FVAR, for short, we just call it PSI. And I can tell you that NSF has been working, since 2018 in dealing with harassment-related issues. And since that time, we've not only issued the term and condition, but we've addressed it in conference proposals, travel proposals, SBIR proposals, postdoc fellowships to individuals, and our research experiences for undergraduates. And this is the next iteration or our next step in this process. And we certainly recognize that absolutely fieldwork can present unique challenges, such as extreme conditions, social isolation, limited communication, and can take place in locations with different social norms. And so we received, this was probably the biggest comment area of all of the comments received on the draft PAP guide. And so we have made some changes to make sure that you're clear what exactly it is the guidance means, what our expectations are. And you were very clear that you weren't exactly sure when it applied and when it didn't. So we moved the definition that is already contained in Chapter 2 to later in the PSI FVAR section. And it's defined, research in the field is defined as data, information, samples being collected off campus or off-site. So this guidance shares NSF's expectations as well as the content of the new supplementary document. And this 2-page document, and there is an absolute limit of 2 pages and no links permitted. We really are trying to make sure that folks think about this, the safety and inclusion aspects, and it will be reviewed as an integral part of the proposer under intellectual merit, broader impacts, or both, as appropriate for the project that is being proposed. So next slide, please. Big highlighted yellow, folks. This is something to pay attention to. One of the things that this was the second big comment area was that people felt they weren't quite ready for the mandatory use in January of Science CV. So yes, we listened to you. And so in January, we will be revising the format. So I'm not going to really talk much in this presentation about research security. We have a session on that on Wednesday. I will be going into a lot more detail. But the bottom line for this presentation is that in January, we will be adjusting the formats, but there will still be fillable formats, and Science CV will both continue to be available. We have incorporated the NDAA 2021 Section 223 certification language into both formats. And again, listening to your concerns, mandatory use of Science CV will not occur until October of 2023. Hopefully that will give you more time to get your faculty ready, do necessary training, do necessary communications, and ask any questions that you may have regarding these new requirements. Next slide, please. So we also have, we revised our goalie language, grant opportunities for academic liaison with industry. This program's been around for a while. What the difference was in this one is that in limited cases, non-SBIR, STTR small businesses may be able to receive funding. It's very clearly articulated in that section of the PAP guide. We also have added a new section on scientific integrity, but the concept of scientific integrity is absolutely not new. It's a section where we tell you exactly what is intended by it, and then we point to various sections of the PAP guide where we believe it's fundamental to your understanding of how we view scientific integrity at the National Science Foundation. There are 2 new checkboxes on the cover sheet, potential life sciences, dual use research of concern, and then the PSI. Next slide, please. So let me talk just a few minutes. I've only got 4 minutes left. CHIPS and Science Act of 2022. Obviously, that's a multi-hundred-page piece of legislation. But there are a few things that I need to cover quickly that we are jumping on right out of the box. We are spending a tremendous amount of time going over all the details, the nitty-gritty details, figuring out what NSF requirements are, what changes will be made to NSF policies and procedures, what new programs, the whole 9 yards. So again, this is really what I wanted to point out, is that it does establish, yay, a NSF Research Security and Policy Office. That's Rebecca Kaiser. She now will officially have her own office. CHIPS actually expands responsible and ethical conduct of research training, mandatory training now for both faculty and for senior personnel. And there are 3 areas that the legislation points out must be included within your RECRA training. We also, this is another area where for faculty and senior personnel, we will be giving additional time to get your training refined, to get your systems in place so that you can track these individuals. And this new requirement for faculty and senior personnel will be required beginning in the end of July of 2022. The language also in CHIPS and Science removed the mandatory cost sharing requirement for MRI and the Robert Noyce Scholarship Program. Now, let me tell you, it's for a period of 5 years. It's all going to be solicitation based. If your solicitation required you to cost share, for example, you have a current MRI award, you will continue to have to meet that cost sharing requirement. We are in the process, and the same with the Robert Noyce Scholarship programs. So it is not retroactive. Both of these organizations are changing their solicitations to address these issues. Next slide, please. So I think we've heard a lot about moving to research.gov. Like I said, I'm extremely pleased that the numbers are very, 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 very high. People are moving. I believe this puts us in good stead to be ready. Next slide, please. Now, I almost don't want to show this slide because I know what some people do when they see a slide like this with a deadline and they say, good, I'm going to wait till then to do anything. So But the bottom line here is these are the last days. So the last day to submit a new proposal on FastLane is Friday, January 27th. Once again, do not wait till January 27th. Start using research.gov now. The last date to submit proposal file updates and budget revisions in FastLane is September 29th. And then the last day to download FastLane submitted proposals and in progress proposal PDFs is that same time frame of September 29th, 2023. Next slide, please. We do have something coming very shortly in October. Research.gov will support preparation and submission of supplemental funding requests, including career life balance requests. They can be submitted in rGov if the award was the result of a proposal submitted in either FastLane or grants.gov. That is new. New supplemental funding requests can be submitted in FastLane until January 27th. And the demo site for how you could use this new system will be available on October 24th. Next slide, please. So we have some other sessions of note, obviously, Science CV and ORCID, Science and Security on Wednesday, and NSF's GRFP program on Thursday. Next slide. Okay, I wanted to end with this because there is very, very important information on free training that you all can avail yourself to. We have the grants conference in the fall, November 14th to 17th, that again will be virtual. But one of the NSF policy webinar series, the next one will be on September 27th, and it's going to cover the use of concept outlines, including a demo of the new system. The registration is now open, so please, we got a lot of questions at the grants conference on concept outlines, so I would strongly encourage you to participate in that session. And that concludes the formal part of my presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And I managed to do it, Michelle.
You did, and in fact, you did such a fantastic job, Jean, that we have 6 minutes for questions. Okay. So there are a couple that are really technical in nature, and I'm just gonna ask them because I think you could probably answer them very quickly. One, can Jean clarify what is meant by Science CV certification for the NSF BioSketch and CMP effective January 2023? Specifically, does NSF require e-signature within Science CV or another step as certification? Or is NSF simply stating that the bio and the CMP must be prepared using Science CV?
No, okay, so let's be very quick on this one, but it's important you all understand. So we have been working with the wonderful Bart Trawick from the National Library of Medicine, and they are actually building the certification requirement into Science CV. It will have whatever the individual, it'll have a date, time, and stamp of that actual individual. For the downloadable, fillable formats, it's just going to be a certification. So it's a kind of certification light, but this, what they are certifying is that the information is accurate, current, and complete. That is what is required in NDAA 2021, section 223. So our full certification process will, with an electronic kind of signature, if you will not occur until October when we go fully to mandatory use of Science CV.
Thank you so much. Here's another question that I think will be quick. Does the change in the MRI program mean that NSF will issue a new program solicitation for the January 2023 deadline?
Yes, ma'am. We are working on it now. It's just about ready to go through the clearance process. And it will eliminate the mandatory cost sharing requirement.
Here's another quick one. Is the RCR training going to be required by July 2023?
Well, what we are putting in the PAP guide is that precisely what CHIPS and Science Act. And so, yes, beginning in The expectation is that we are giving a 6-month hiatus for just faculty and senior personnel, but we are going to be requiring that requirement will go into effect at the end of July for faculty and senior personnel. More details will be coming on that later, because I know every time I specify a date, someone says, Gene Feldman said it, but it's not in writing anywhere. You will be hearing from us, and we will be giving you all the information regarding timing, dates, and everything that I've mentioned in this presentation.
Here's another quick clarification. Fastlane decommissioning, : is there a timeline or plan available yet for moving the non-proposal features of Fastlane to research.gov, such as award lookup?
Such as what? I'm sorry.
Award lookup.
Well, what we're working on now is a PSM1. There's going to be a PSM2. So some of these things won't be available right away, but certainly at the end of the day, all of these will be available electronically so that you can continue to access this information. But the award lookup, remember that date that I told you, if it's in Fastlane, your access is going to end at the end of September. So pay attention to those dates.
Thank you. Here's another. Are there any plans to update the BAAM system to allow the sharing of proposals, routing to SPO for review and submission of outlines, LOIs, and full proposals?
Yes, I mean, this was just like I said, a first effort. It's our first way out for the BAA that was for the research innovation engines. And so clearly, enhancements do need to be made, and we are discussing those internally. In fact, I was on the phone with our colleagues in the Division of Information Systems before this meeting. And so, obviously, is this perfect? No, of course it isn't. It's the first go around, but we can always continue to work with the community. We listen to your concerns, and we're going to make sure that we continue to work with you on the BAM system.
I think I have time for one last question. Will no cost share for MRI be in effect for this coming round, January 2023 due date? The current solicitation online still refers to required cost share.
Yes, ma'am. As I mentioned, the solicitation is being revised as we speak by the wonderful Dr. Randy Phelps, who runs the MRI program. And so, yes, for the next cycle, no cost sharing. But if you have an existing award, let me continue to say that, and it's got cost sharing in it, you have to continue to meet that cost sharing requirement.
Thank you so much, Jean. There's a couple that we didn't get to. We'll make sure to those of you who asked questions that we didn't get a chance to answer live that we'll get those addressed as well. But in the interest of time, we're going to move to Jenny Robbins from EPA. Thank you again, Jean.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Jenny Robbins with EPA's Office of Research and Development. Alex Raver, who has been doing these updates for the past several years, has accepted a job at USDA and will be leaving us next month. We'll miss her a lot, but we'll make do. So next slide, please. I just have a few updates for you, some upcoming research funding opportunities, some upcoming grants webinars, and just a couple plugs for our grants listserv and our research grants listserv. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Right now, we only have one RFA notice posted. It closes in 2 days, so I didn't include it on here, but just for your information, it's assessing perchlorate occurrence in ambient waters following the usage of fireworks. And again, that closes in 2 days, but the following we expect to be posted in the next coming months. So there's one on landfill emissions, nanosensor technology to detect and monitor pollutants, children's health, cumulative impacts assessments, and enhanced aquifer recharge. Next slide, please. Our 20th annual P3 awards will also be posted. That has moved from a 2-phase project. This is a student design competition, and it will be a single phase with larger awards that are 2 years instead of 1 year. There will also be 2 training competitions posted soon to place college or university students in our labs, one in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the other in Duluth, Minnesota. And for updates on these, please check our website, epa.gov/research-grants/research funding opportunities. Next slide, please. And thank you. EPA's Office of Grants and Development hosts webinars for the grants community. And if you're thinking about applying for an EPA grant or currently managing an EPA grant, please check these out. Past webinars are posted at epa.gov/grants/EPA grants webinars. And you can also update to the grants listserv to get updates on the webinars. Next slide, please. Upcoming one's tomorrow, but don't fear if you can't make it tomorrow or you don't have time to alert people to the webinar, it will be posted. The recorded webinar will be posted, and that's on the competition process at EPA. On September 20th, there's a webinar on developing a budget and budget narratives. And on September 22nd, there will be a webinar on complying with EPA assistance agreements, specifically effectively expending and documenting the use of EPA grant funds. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned before, we encourage everyone to sign up for the EPA Grants Listserv, the link below. This will have updates on any new guidance, any upcoming trainings or webinars, and anything else that would be pertinent to the grants community. And last but not least, next slide. Oh, this shows you where to go to sign up for the Grants Listserv. Next slide. And then we also have a research grants listserv from my office that will give you updates on upcoming RFAs, as well as webinars that we hold for those RFAs. And if there's any other information to contribute, such as changes in closing dates or anything like that. Next slide. And this is my contact information. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me at robbins.jennifer@epa.gov. That's it.
Thanks, Jenny. We'll see if we have any questions. We have some time. Oh, there's a question. How do I register for training?
I think you can just go to those links on the webinar, grants webinar page.
And I think you included a link for the landing page of your website.
Correct.
On there? Okay, great.
Yep.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Okay, well, thank you. I think we can move on now to Heidi Custer from Department of Homeland Security. Thanks, Heidi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like she said, my name is Heidi Custer. I'm with Homeland Security, specifically in the Division of Financial Assistance Policy and Oversight, friendly known as FAPO. We are DHS's headquarters office that all the grants and so on runs through our office. Like Jean said, I included a lot of slides from our May presentation for those who weren't able to make that or are new to the FTP. So I'm really not FDP, sorry. I'm not going to read through them, but they're there for your reference. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. So this was our FY22 funding. Obviously, we're at the end of FY22, so I don't have any updates for next year yet. Next slide, please. And these are our current initiatives. We manage the Data Act reporting, implementing DHS grants measures, which is a huge thing that OMB is focusing on nowadays. We review all the notices of funding opportunity. They come through our office. before they're posted to grants.gov. And we perform oversight reviews of the program. So we go in not like an auditor, but just to make sure that the components are following DHS policy on grants, which is consistent with 2 CFR. And then we also represent DHS on government-wide initiatives, which are currently BABA, Build America, Buy America, the PMA Area 3 strategy, and Nspm 33, which I'll go over again shortly. So next slide, please. So I'm sure everyone's heard a lot about BABA and the Made in America office. The Made in America office recently posted some really detailed FAQs and guidance on their OMB Max page. Now you do have to have an OMB Max account to access that. The FAQs and guidance will address, like I listed here, what type of awards are covered, whether there can be waivers, types of infrastructure as well. So like I said, you need OMB Max account to get into that. So I sent forward with this presentation a soft copy of the FAQs themselves. So as we've talked about, you'll receive these presentations after, along with that document. So for DHS, FEMA has received a waiver for its programs through January 1st, 2023. And then from what I'm aware, there's also a presentation tomorrow at 4:30. So most of our grants deal with infrastructure, but there's also requirements related to research. So I will be attending that session tomorrow, and I suggest that you do too. Next slide, please. I'd also mentioned the Presidential Management Agenda Area 3 Strategy 2, which is a mouthful. So I did include this slide in May as well, but we've added a little bit more towards it. So our director, Vince Sproles, serves on this committee for DHS. So he's told us about the strategy is to build capacity in federal financial management to include financial assistance. So that's kind of how it relates it to us. The first goal statement is to formalize the financial community's governance to straighten the financial assistance abilities, the financial government's ability and capacity to effectively implement the agenda and the vision. And then they're going to focus in on building a robust financial assistance community. There are representatives on this from DHS, HHS, Commerce, and NSF for that. Next slide, please. And then this acronym I always get wrong, NSPM 33. Let's say that slowly. So National Security Presidential Memo 33. And DHS is a member of the overall government-wide working group for this guidance. Recently, the working group has posted the notice of implementation in the Federal Register. And as with the FAQs, I did include that notice to be forwarded on with the presentation at the end in case you would like to read the Federal Register. Next slide, please. In case you haven't heard, grants.gov is migrating to the cloud. Apparently that's the thing to do nowadays. We at DHS are about to migrate our internal website to the cloud. They think it's going to be done in 60 days, but we're thinking closer to a year. So if that's just for a DHS system, it's going to take a long time here to migrate something as large as grants.gov to the cloud. So what I did is I included a few of their questions in these slides. Next slide, please. One of the big things that I think will be of interest to you is about when you're putting applications into the system. So we don't think it's going to, be completely ready for a while. I did put in the downtimes So you may have applications started before the downtime and wondering when they do this, will they be there when it comes back? So I'd hate to have you put all the information in, it comes back up, poof, it's gone. So yes, they will be there when you get back after the migration. All progress on your applications will be saved during the downtime. And next slide, please. So the questions on what happens to your applications that were in progress before the migration but hadn't been submitted, again, they're saying that all your information will be saved. Other questions about the URL in case you bookmarked it, they're going to say the same. Some IP addresses may be changing and so on. And then importantly, here's some email notifications to contact them if you have any questions. And final slide, please. So like this is my contact information as well as Vince Sprules. He's our director and he does sit on a lot of the working groups. So he may have answers to questions that I don't. And I can turn the rest over to the next, because I think I went through that fairly quickly. So there should be time for our jam-packed agenda.
Heidi, you did indeed. Thank you so much. There is a question for you.
Okay.
How is DHS modifying its proposal deadlines that fall within the grants.gov downtime window?
We haven't gotten to that point yet, is the honest question. Once it comes closer to that and we get more guidance from grants.gov on where they are, then we will make adjustments. However, we do think that the first set of downtime is going to be before we're going to be on a continuing resolution, so we really won't be anticipating applications. And we hope that everything has been moved to the cloud by the time it's actually set up for us to accept applications.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give people one more minute to ask questions because we have some time. Here is one. What is the FR regarding the security memo?
Okay.
What is in the FR regarding the security memo?
It is, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. I have included it, but happened to have been on leave last week when I got it, so I haven't specifically read that. Vince, if you can hear me, you want to send me a message internally, that would be great, so I could answer the question. But I am, that's one good thing about being at home and you have all the information at your fingertips online. You want to bear with me, or I can get an answer back to you by the end of this session so I don't hold up the next presenter. And I can put that in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
And that would be just fine.
Okay, I will put the response to that question in the chat. Sorry, I didn't have it up handy. Like I said, Vince attends most of these meetings, but he's got a conflict for this one today. So he is in a BABA meeting right now. So I will get that response to that question back in the chat.
Thank you. And we're so appreciative of your time, Heidi. Moving on next in order is Christiane Diallo and Mary Sladek from NASA.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon. For those who are joining us for the first time, I am Christiane Diallo, a senior program analyst with NASA Procurement Management and Policy Division. And I am joined by my colleague, Mary Sladek, a research program manager with NASA Science Mission Directorate. Today, we'll be going over a few policy updates and some upcoming initiatives. Next slide, please. Our contact information is listed here, so feel free to send us any questions if you have any questions following this meeting. Next slide. Before I get into the policy updates, I would like to share that NASA will be hosting its first Equity Stakeholder Town Hall on Wednesday, September 28th. It is scheduled from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and the purpose of the town hall is to discuss NASA's 2022 Equity Action Plan, which was released in April of this year. The purpose of this, again, town hall is to discuss the plan and also share some updates and actions that we've taken to address equity in various focus areas, including grants and cooperative agreements. Following that plenary session, there will be a breakout session for each of the focus areas that is outlined in the plan. And during this time, participants will have the opportunity to engage with NASA's leaders, various mission directorates, and ask questions about the plan itself. If you'd like to register for the event, please use the link that is provided on this slide. Next slide, please. Also, the NASA Grants Policy and Compliance Group, which is the group that I represent, transitioned from the Office of the Chief Financial Officer to the Office of Procurement Management and Policy Division. This transition was effective on July 31, and it does not impact the way that our group is currently structured. We will continue to oversee grants policies and regulations, and we also have a new website, which is posted on this slide for your reference. The NASA Shared Services Center, which is responsible for the issuance and administration of grants and cooperative agreements, will continue to serve in that role. And in case you're not familiar with their website, it is also listed on this slide for your reference. Next slide, please. Next slide. If you recall, at the last FDP meeting, we did share that NASA was proposing a new term and condition in support of Executive 13985 titled Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities through the Federal Government. The term and condition, which requires NASA grant and cooperative agreement recipients to obtain at least one quote from a small and/or minority business when the acquisitions of goods or services exceeds the simplified acquisition threshold, was published in the Federal Register on February 25th, and the comments period is closed on April 24th. We received approximately 35 comments, which have all been addressed, and we will be moving forward with that implementation of this term and condition. For your information, the full text of the term and condition is referenced here, and we will also include it in the Grants and Cooperative Agreement Manual that is set to release next month. And following the release of the Gcam, we will also publish our response to all of the comments within the Federal Register. Next slide, please. As mentioned, we are releasing our 2023 edition of the Gcam next month. And some of the key updates that I would like to highlight include a new term and condition that is going to be complying with the Infrastructure Investments in Jobs Act. Per this new term and condition, NASA award recipients with awards that include infrastructure activities as it is currently defined by OMB Memorandum M2211 are prohibited from using NASA funds for infrastructure project unless the products and constructions materials are manufactured in the United States. We've also included a new language on specific conditions, and once the Gcam becomes effective, applicants' awards with an elevated risk profile resulting from the pre-award risk assessment will include a specific term and condition relative to the circumstances that causes the applicant's risk to be elevated. And examples of some of these circumstances are also highlighted in the Gcam. The last update that we have is the revision to the Mishap reporting term and condition. We've revised the term and condition to describe and clarify actions that recipients must take when they are reporting injuries and or damages to NASA property. Next slide. Those are all the grants policy updates that I have for you. So I will now turn it over to Mary for some SMD updates. Mary?
Thanks, Christiane. I'm Mary Sladek, and I am a member of the Senior Advisors for Research and Analysis, or SARA team in the Science Mission Directorate. The Science Mission Directorate is the largest funder of assistance awards at NASA, and we collaborate very closely with Christiane and her colleagues. On occasion, we also collaborate with NASA's other 4 mission directorates on particular funding opportunities. For example, we are currently collaborating with the Space Technology Mission Directorate, and we have a joint solicitation with the Office of STEM Engagement for data science equity, access, and priority for research and education. Dick asked us to share some information about our new strategy documents. And in brief, this chart provides links to some of the recent or coming publications and offers some strategy making opportunities. NASA released a strategic plan for the Government Performance and Results Modernization Act with the catchy title, NASA's 2022 Strategic Plan. It's a 4-year plan, and it includes in Appendix A, the agency's first learning agenda. That learning agenda has priority question number 4, how do NASA's procurement and grant practices advance equity for improved access to opportunities for underserved communities? SMD, so that's all I'm going to say about the strategic plan, but SMD uses a kind of unique way to set research funding priorities. We use decadal surveys or studies done by the national academies. In brief, the decadal strategy seeks community consensus in identifying compelling science questions for SMD divisions to address in its funding opportunities or in its big flight mission announcements of opportunities, also known as broad agency announcements. Decadals engage scientists and engineers to shape the future of NASA science in 10-year intervals. The 2 most recent decadals are the Astronomy and Astrophysics 2020, or Astro 2020, released in October 21, and the Origins and Worlds and Life, a decadal strategy for planetary science and for astrobiology. That decadal is 2023 to 2032, and it was released in April of 2022. Coming soon, maybe in 2023, will be a new decadal product for the Biological and Physical Sciences Division. And the Heliophysics Division is just starting its 2024 decadal survey process. So that's the opportunity to actually potentially have input into the creation of a decadal. Next chart, please. SMD has an inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility, or IDEA strategy. It's not about publications. It's about implementing IDEA in both inward-facing, such as training for the SMD workforce, and outward-facing, such as funding opportunities. IDEA got started prior to the 2022 strategic plan and the agency's diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility DEIA plan. Next chart, please. Despite our head start, SMD's IDEA aligns with the agency's equity plans, goals, and NASA's core values that are described in the 2022 strategic plan. One outward-facing IDEA initiative that I mentioned at the May FDP is SMD's Bridge program. The Bridge program will host a virtual workshop October 17th through to 21st, and this chart provides the registration link. If you have questions about attending or any other questions about the Bridge program, please email Dr. Patty Boyd at the email shown on this chart. Next chart, please. So Dick also asked, what are you hearing from principal investigators and administrators most often? And we do get a lot of questions, and this chart shows the 3 most frequent. As I mentioned in previous FDPs, SMD accepts volunteer reviewers, and the last bullet has the landing page that lists what are their most current SMD reviewing opportunities that are open. And I would also add that if you are signed up through our Nspires system, you can also receive ads from the other mission directorates who are sometimes recruiting for reviewers. The top ask is where to find the text that places the China restrictions on NASA and how that flows down to proposers and awardees. This chart provides the verbatim text and the link to the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2022, Section 526. And NASA translates China or Chinese-owned company to mean the People's Republic of China, PRC, any company owned by the PRC, or any company incorporated under the laws of the PRC. Thus, Chinese universities and similar institutions are considered to be incorporated under the laws of the PRC, and therefore the funding restrictions apply to grants and cooperative agreements that include bilateral participation, collaboration, or coordination with Chinese universities. The ultimate NASA determination on the restriction and how the restriction will apply will always depend on the individual facts provided by the organization or the individual to NASA. And then the middle bullet on this chart is just a brief acknowledgement that we have heard requests that COVID is still out there and still causing disruption. And folks have wondered whether we are going to offer more COVID recovery. And it is very unlikely that we will do so, since we have not really had strong calls from the community. Now, that's not an invitation for you to call, but for those of you who have been asking, we don't have plans to offer it again right now. Next chart, please. And my final chart talks about SMD's most recent efforts to reduce administrative burden. We are experimenting with no fixed due date programs, or in NASA speak, we say NOD. The Planetary Science Division is leading the way on this, and the Heliophysics Division has set up a schedule to review its NOD submissions every 3 months. The only SMD-wide NOD is the Topical Workshops, Symposia, and Conferences. TWISC eliminates the use of NOIs, notices of intent, in favor of a proposer simply emailing the appropriate Science Mission Directorate Program Officer. And I want to emphasize that this is a Science Mission Directorate initiative only. So we sometimes get requests from folks who would really want to go to the Space Technology Mission Directorate or Exploration Systems Mission Directorate. We don't fund those things. So this chart has a very long URL to help you find who the proper Science Mission Directorate Division Program Officer is. And if you have trouble using that, you can give me a call or send me an email, because I also double as TWISC's SMD-wide coordinator. I have no money. I don't review proposals. I do try to match make you if you are unable to find your match. Additionally, we are experimenting, but the grants policy branch has not yet authorized true fixed amount awards using the 2 CFR 200.1 definition shown on this chart. We have been doing this for a couple of years via the Future Investigators in Earth and Space Science and Technologies, or FINEST. FINEST is a single investigator, single graduate student project. The FINEST limits the total award size regardless of cost categories. So if you have ideas about how SMD and NASA can make burden less onersome, or have ideas about how we can do things better, feel free to email me directly, or to send a generic email to HQ Sarah@nasa.gov. That's our generic mailbox for the Science Mission Directorate's Research and Analysis Program. So Christiane, over to you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Christiane. I believe that's the end of the presentation. We do have a few questions. Christiane answered a few, not live, written, but we still have a couple. The first question is the PRC limitation to companies alone, or will there be restrictions on foreign nationals from the PRC? Mary, Christiane?
Hi, sorry, I don't want to call that a trick question, but I was only speaking about the China restriction on NASA. I was not talking about ITAR or ERA restrictions, which of course are not simply on Chinese foreign nationals, but would be restrictions on other foreign nationals. So I would ask the questioner to please clarify the question, because it's as written, it's can't really be answered.
Okay, great. So while we're waiting, someone asked if Taiwan, from NASA's perspective, is Taiwan considered part of China, included in that restriction?
Taiwan is not, the US does not consider Taiwan part of the PRC, so it's not, it is not as part of the restriction.
Next one, will there be a definition provided for the, quote, utilized by NASA location stipulation related to the restriction on hosting official Chinese government visitors? If research occurring at a location is supported by a NASA grant, for instance, is that location then, quote, utilized by NASA?
That is a great question, and I'm going to take it back to our legal counsel and our Office of International and Intergovernmental Relations. And I would also ask the person who asked the question to send me an email with the specific facts of the matter, because our OGC and our Office of International and Intergovernmental Relations doesn't like to answer hypothetical questions. They like to have everything fact-based. So if it's a general question, we can give it a try. But if you actually have some specific things in mind, let you know, spell it out in an email to me.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any.
I think we had a couple of charts about a couple of non-SMD funding opportunities available through our NASA solicitation and proposal integrated review and evaluation system.
Yes, thank
They're
you.
also on Red.gov.
Thank you, Mary. I was trying to get my mic to work here. Yes, the next 5 slides are a list of open and upcoming funding opportunities within the Office of STEM Engagement, as well as the Science, Technology, and Mission Directorate. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through each of the slides, as they will be posted on the FDP website, but I will encourage you all to refer to the slides, as it contains detailed information about each funding opportunity, the proposal due dates, as well as contact information if you have any questions. That is all for me.
We're good. Okay. Let me see. We might have another slide. No, I think we're fine. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Oh, you have more slides. I'm sorry. There's a pause and I think you're finished. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine, Alex. Well, what I was saying is that the next 5 slides are the information about the upcoming opportunities, and participants can refer to the slides after the presentation for details on when to submit the proposals.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you both, Mary and Christiane. We are going to move to Carrie Mitchell from the National Institutes of Health. Carrie?
Thank you, and hello everyone. I'm a grants policy officer in NIH's Office of Policy for Extramural Research Administration, or OPRA, and I'll be providing our policy and system process updates on behalf of NIH today. We can go to the next slide, please. We'll start with policy updates, and we can go to the next slide. I do want to let you know about the upcoming publication of the revised NIH grants policy statement, or GPS, for fiscal year 2022. This revised GPS is applicable to all NIH grants and cooperative agreements with budget periods beginning on or after October 1st of 2021. However, the actual GPS will be issued on or about, on or after December 31st of 2022. Previous versions of the GPS remain applicable as standard terms and conditions of award for all grants and cooperative agreements with budget periods that began prior to October 1 of 2021. NIH will continue to publish any interim grants policy changes or clarifications by issuing guide notices, which can be found on the NIH Guide to Grants and Contracts website linked on this slide. And as a standard, a significant changes table will be published alongside the GPS update. Next slide, please. Applicants and recipients are now required to use the updated BioSketch and other support format for applications, just-in-time reports, and RPPRs. Effective January 25th of 2022, electronic signatures and supporting documentation are required now. Not using the appropriate formats may cause NIH to withdraw applications from or delay consideration for funding. And all research endeavors should still be disclosed regardless of the form version being used. Next slide, please. On behalf of the National Science and Technology Council Research Security Subcommittee, NSF is now soliciting public comment on common disclosure forms for the biographical sketch and the current and pending or other support sections of research applications. On this slide, we've included a link to the subcommittee's webpage posted on NSF site. And as Heidi from Homeland Security mentioned earlier, the Nspm 33 policy, that is what this website is linked to. And once you go to that website, you will find links to the Federal Register notice that's soliciting public comment, the draft common forms, the spreadsheet summarizing all the data elements and attributes, and an updated disclosure table showing exactly what types of activities are to be reported, where in the application you would report those, when an update of activities should be reported, and also what activities do not need to be reported. The deadline to submit any comments on these forms is October 31st of 2022. Next slide, please. This guide notice went into effect in July of this year and updated requirements to notify NIH of removal or disciplinary action involving PD, PIs, or other senior key personnel. Recipient institutions are now required to notify NIH when individuals identified as the PD, PI, or other senior key personnel in an NIH notice of award are removed from their position or are otherwise disciplined by the recipient institution due to concerns about harassment, bullying, retaliation, or hostile working conditions. Notification must be made by the AOR within 30 days of the removal or disciplinary action, and they must be submitted through the dedicated web form that we've linked on this slide. This requirement does not replace any existing requirements to obtain prior approval for any significant change in the status of the PDPI or other senior key personnel specifically named in the notice of award. We've also included links in this slide for more information about how NIH addresses these institutional notifications, the NIH commitment to supporting a safe and respectful workplace at institutions that receive NIH funding, and resources on reporting allegations of harassment, including sexual harassment, discrimination, and other forms of inappropriate conduct that could result in a hostile work environment. Next slide, please. Just a reminder that recipients will continue to receive an error preventing submission of an RPPR if there are studies involving clinical trials where registration is due and there is no NCT number entered into the human subjects and clinical trials information form, or when results are due and have not been submitted in clinicaltrials.gov. To address the delinquent registration error, the recipient will have to provide the NCT number issued by clinicaltrials.gov or provide the clinicaltrials.gov registration receipt that is received when submitting the trial registration information to clinicaltrials.gov. To address the results reporting error, the recipient will be required to submit the trial results information to clinicaltrials.gov or provide the clinicaltrials.gov submission receipt for either a good cause extension request or a certificate of delayed submission of results information. Recipients must take action to bring the clinical trial into compliance in order to clear the validation errors, submit the RPPR, and continue to receive funding. The notice we've linked at the bottom of the slide contains much more specific information on these validation errors and how to resolve them. Next slide, please. We can go to next. I'm going to start with the systems process update. Many of you know we recently completed our transition to Form G, but NIH is already in the process of implementing another Forms transition to Forms H. Forms H will be required for application due dates on or after January 25th of 2023. You'll see some pretty minimal changes moving to Forms H, with a key Forms change being the addition of a new Other Plans single attachment field on the 4 forms that we show on the slide. This transition was necessary to implement the new 2023 NIH Data Management and Sharing, or DMS policy. I do want to point out that although the DMS policy will not be applicable to fellowships and institutional training grants, the Other Plans attachment field was added for potential future use for other types of plans onto those grants. We've linked to a high-level summary of Forms H application form changes if you'd like more information on that. And also, please be aware that additional RPPR and ERA systems changes are planned for implementation of the new DMS policy. And we will continue to communicate those changes as details are finalized. Next slide, please. I'll quickly highlight the timeline for Forms H. This fall, additional Forms H implementation details will be communicated through a guide notice. The new Forms H application guide will be posted by October 25th of 2022. And that's also when applicants will start to see Forms H application forms packages posted to our funding opportunities. Just so you're aware, because NIH has over 1,000 active funding opportunity announcements at any given time, the posting process can take around a month, but packages should be posted by November 25th of 2022 and no later than 30 days prior to the receipt date. And then again on January 25th of 2023, you'll see the first Forms H application due date. Next slide, please. As some of you are already aware, Edison transitioned from NIH ERA to the National Institute of Standards and Technology last month. This transition incorporated several new system capabilities and enhancements, including the ability to initiate two-way communication with agency staff, integration with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office database to ensure accuracy and reduce recipient reporting burden, optional real-time email notifications throughout the reporting and review process, and enhanced security through login.gov. All existing data, including attachments associated with invention and patent reports, transferred over to the new iEdison system automatically, and existing and new iEdison accounts will now be associated with the new system. Also a reminder that there were no changes to the NIH requirements for invention and patent reporting. The only change is the new iEdison system interface and the associated login.gov requirements for access. Next slide, please. Effective in August of 2022, NIH established a Central Federal Financial Report, or FFR, and Financial Closeout Service Center under OER Afosr. The FFR and Financial Closeout Service Center will address and prevent financial overdraws by recipients and encourage recipients to complete drawdowns and reconciliation before submitting their FFRs to NIH. So what exactly does the center do? Activities include receiving, reviewing, and reconciling the annual and final FFRs, closing transactions submitted to PMS as part of final FFR reconciliation and processing, and also reviewing fellowship awards where the FFR is not required after termination notice is received. NIH will submit the closing transactions to PMS. FFR process improvements include reconciling the FFR with PMS data and coordinating reviews with NIH ICs to minimize any errors. Next slide, please. A central email inbox is now available for inquiries related to the submission and processing of FFRs and financial closeout. We've included it on the slide. It's Afosr FFR inquiries at od.nih.gov. We've also included other resources related to FFR, such as the grants policy statement, a grants and funding closeout webpage, and some frequently asked questions. Next slide, please. And we can go to the next. Finally, moving into the HHS and federal-wide systems updates. GSA implemented a new process in SAM.gov to validate entities as a first step in requesting a UEI, or a unique entity identifier, and for completing SAM.gov entity registration. Due to the high demands on those systems, GSA has experienced delays in the SAM process used to update or renew entity registrations. These SAM.gov system challenges have the potential to impact all applicants and recipients across the federal government. So NIH is making an exception to the late application policy until this issue is resolved. If an applicant entity does not have a current SAM registration or renewal at the time of the application submission due date, NIH will accept late applications within the 2-week wait window, as long as the entity has submitted all SAM registration or renewal documentation at least 2 weeks prior to the application due date, and all other aspects of the application are compliant and consistent with the funding opportunity announcement requirements. The application cover letter must include documentation demonstrating that the SAM registration or renewal request was submitted prior to the application due date. This could be something like a confirmation email or a screenshot. Any entity registration that was set to expire between March 18th of 2022 and April 18th of 2022 was automatically granted a 60-day extension to renew its registration in SAM.gov. And we've linked to a Federal Service Desk FAQ for more information on that. Also, an automatic 30-day extension was implemented for any existing SAM.gov entity registration needing to be renewed, with an expiration date ranging between April 29th of 2022 and April 28th of 2023. Again, that extension was automatic, and entity registrants do not need to take any further action for that extension. And one final reminder that organizations that do not have an active SAM registration cannot be issued an NIH award. Next slide. If you have any questions about anything presented by me today or anything else related to NIH grants and applications, you can contact any of these offices listed here on the slide. We have a Division of Grants Policy, Compliance and Oversight, our Systems Policy Branch, extramural inventions and technology resources, and also included again that email for the new opera at the FAR Center. And that concludes my presentation today.
Thank you so much, Carrie. We do have a number of questions in the chat, and there's a little bit of time, so I'm gonna see how much of this we can get through. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. The first question is, when is it expected that NSPM 33 common disclosure forms become effective?
That I am actually not sure of. If there's someone else from NIH on the line that can respond to that, that would be helpful. And if not, I can look that up and get that information to you, Michelle, for you to distribute out.
Okay, here's another one. This is a general question for NIH staff after the OS policy slide and seeing link to FAQ. Is it possible to add updated date information to each FAQ item? It's nearly impossible to effectively monitor for change and additions. The DMS FAQ has this taking place, and it will no doubt be immensely helpful. So I don't know if you can comment on that or not, but I suppose it's a friendly suggestion that would be helpful.
I will certainly take that suggestion back. Thank you.
Here's a question about the PI removal issue. Is there a requirement to notify NIH of a removal or disciplinary action of a PI or senior personnel prior to an award when an award is expected, or should you wait for the award?
I would highly recommend notifying NIH as soon as possible. The requirement is within 30 days of renewal or disciplinary action. So I would say whichever I see you have that application pending with, you would want to reach out to them for some guidance on what to do or fill out the reporting form.
Thank you. This is a question about Michelle's presentation, which you may not be able to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Did I understand correctly in Michelle's presentation that reviewers will generally not see the new NIH DMS plan unless it is integral to the project and specified within the FOA?
That is correct. Generally, the peer reviewers will not see the actual data management and sharing plan unless it is integral to the actual project. They will, just for everyone's awareness who might not have been in the session earlier today, reviewers will be able to look at the budget justification for the plan, but will not actually see the plan again unless it is integral to the project.
Just a couple of more. Will the NIH parent FOAs be reissued to accommodate Forms H, or will they remain the same and just add Forms H as an option based on the planned due date?
Let me check on it. I think I know the answer, but I don't feel 100% confident in saying it just in case. Oh, hold on, I'm getting a message from one of my NIH folks. Let me see. Yeah, we
It's
don't.
Understandable.
Right now, we do not anticipate that those parent announcements will be reissued. The Form H packages, again, will be posted starting in October.
And last question, had info on the new Opera FFR Center been sent out?
As in just distributed out to this group? Not that I'm aware of. Not that I know of. I believe today is the first sort of announcement of that. So y'all are the first to know.
Well, and this concludes the exam portion of our program. Thank you.
Thank you. And again,
so
if anyone has any questions, please reach out to NIH and we're happy to address any of those questions for you.
We very much appreciate it. Thank you so much, Carrie.
Thank you.
We're going to turn the program over now to Calvin Scott. Calvin, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
From the Air Force Office of Scientific Research, take it away.
All right, and I promise I won't hold you guys longer than we need to be held. My name is Calvin Scott. I'm the Senior Procurement Analyst for the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. Next slide. Today, this is what we're going to discuss. Not a lengthy discussion. It's more information for you guys. And as probably a lot of you already know, I manage the VA email, so I'm normally the person responding to you and trying to connect you with program officers when there are communication issues. Next slide. This is just about just to kind of give you guys a visual of where the Air Force's basic research or I guess research footprint is, and you see our domestic as well as overseas locations. And I believe we're in the process of standing another one up, but there's more to come on that one. You can go to the next slide. All right, and this is just, a breakout of all the technical directors we have throughout the Air Force. But as you see, the highlighted block in the top left corner, the Air Force Office of Scientific Research, we are the basic research arm for the Air Force. So a lot of the other technical directorates, they deal with more of the applied research, like the civils and stirs, or the the standard contracts for whatever mission they're supporting at their technical directorate. All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, and this is just kind of more about us. We've actually increased the number of program officers we have. I believe it's like 40 now. So we have over 36 program officers that do just what the words say. We find, form, fund, and forward the research on transition it to getting it to either off the shelf item or something that, will advance our military. We can go to the next slide. All right, this is kind of our granting process. We know that everybody goes through grants.gov, or I'm learning a lot from different presentations. I'm seeing that I think NSF uses research, or they're going to be transitioning to research.gov. But once you guys submit a proposal, it transitions through to us. We get it to the program officers once we do an initial check, and they'll complete their proposal review. Sometimes that's a peer review, and sometimes they just, they'll choose to fund it or not. If it's selected for funding, then, they have a cost and technical evaluation form that they fill out, and it just kind of goes, for review to make sure that, they have funding left in their portfolio. And then it comes to contracting to review and award. And then we just monitor it from, all the way to closeout. All right, and that is the granting process. We can go to the next slide. All right, and this is our current BAA, how the areas of the topic areas are broke out. I do encourage anyone that's interested in doing business with the Air Force in regards to research, take some time and read through all of the different topic descriptions, so that you won't just kind of be throwing an idea out there, because that's a lot. That's where a lot of confusion comes in with our program officers, is when people just someone will just, I guess, just apply to something or just send an incomplete proposal by the standards of the BAA. All right, next slide. All right, this slide was important because we want to definitely improve your competitiveness for those new to doing business with the government, as well as the regulars that we have. We want you, the most important thing you can do is make sure that you establish a good line of communication with the program officers. They know their portfolio. Talking and contracting, for the most part, all we can do is redirect you to the program officers. You want to make sure you communicate with them early and often. Normally that kind of kicks off by emailing a white paper to their portfolio email box. And then they'll, that's kind of where the communication kicks off. If you send an email, please give them at least a week to look at that email, because there are thousands of people trying to get their proposals reviewed. All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, you can attend grant writing courses, or even consider reaching out to the program officer, letting them know that you'd be interested in being a peer review if opportunity comes up. That's another way to kind of establish a direct line of communication with the program officer. All right, and we can go to the next slide. All right, and we just want everybody to know, we have a small pot of money that we're trying to do have a great impact. So the proposals, the funding considerations, are going to be tough at times, but when we have fallout money, if you are in direct communication with the program officers, then that could facilitate your proposal being the next one up. So just make sure, again, most important thing from my presentation is going to be communication. If that communication doesn't happen, then it slows down, if not delays the research getting done, and that's what the overall goal is. All right, next slide. And this is just a snippet of our funding opportunities. We've added a few this year, but we have our lab tasks. We have the normal grants. We have the GIFT program. We have annual Center of Excellence grants. We have the MIRI program, the DURA program, where we partner with the Army and the Navy. We have the depth score program. So this is just a list of a lot of the current ongoing announcements we have, or some of those have already closed out. But if you go to grants.gov, you can sort through pretty simple and see, just to look to see what open opportunities we have as well as you can reach out to the program officers to see if they have anything coming up. All right, next slide. And my contact information isn't on this email, but on the very first slide, it has my contact information. If you have any questions in regards to the Open BAA, I manage that email, so I'm pretty good about responding within a few minutes to, I'd at least say within a day or so, depending on if I'm on leave or not. So if you don't have any questions here, then please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always here.
Well, thank you, Calvin. This is great. And we do actually have a question in the Q&A. The first is, does Afosr program officials accept unsolicited white papers with the intent to share ideas about a potential research proposal?
Yes, and that's where I was advising them to make sure you want to make sure you submit it to the correct program officer, because I'm not a super technical person. I have my master's, but it's on the business side, so I don't want to make it. I don't want to sound crazy, but if you're dealing in like whatever that specific topic is, make sure you read it to make sure it falls within that topic. Because a lot of times, we get proposals or we get white papers and they're submitted, but they're like it's to the wrong program officer. So by the time the program officer does get to it, he reads it and he's like, this doesn't apply. Depending on how much time he has, he could redirect you to the right program officer or one of his peers in the sister agency. Because again, it seems like since I've been in this position, the entire research community, we're going to cross swords at some point. So that's just another way that that early communication can facilitate a better opportunity for the proposals to be funded. But the answer is yes, you can submit unsolicited white papers. All white papers are to be reviewed, whether they're solicited or not.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think that we are finished with questions. So thank you, Calvin, and we will move on to last but not very the least, Wade Wargo from the Office of Naval Research. Wade?
Hey, thanks, Alex. Don't have slides to provide, so I'm just going to talk through. I have 4 updates to provide everyone on behalf of ONR. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is some changes to requirements in our interim performance reporting, or our interim RPPRs. Second, I'm going to talk about a DoD post-award delegation checklist that we intend to start using. Third, I'm going to talk about revision to some of our internal closeout guidance and closeout metrics for FY23 and beyond. And then lastly, talk about a few personnel updates and remote work status. So first topic is about interim performance reporting requirements, or interim RPPR changes. Many of you with ONR grants would have requirements that say we have annual interim performance reporting, and all the grants had a June 15th due date. And then those reports were to be submitted to the Army Research Office's RPPR system. But you folks weren't able to actually do that. We had some staffing changes and some reorganizations, and we weren't able to provide the Army Research Office the information they needed to open the portal to our grant recipients. I understand that our technical departments did inform via email the principal investigators of this delay. I did just find out that grant recipients, as of last week, actually September 6th, the portal is now open to accept their interim RPPR reports. So they can start uploading that now. So going forward in the future, through this process, we decided to update our terms and conditions. There's a decision to have a new reporting cycle. The new requirement is going to be reporting on the government fiscal year for the work done during the government fiscal year, and then have a November 1st due date. So we actually have a new ONR addendum to the DoD General Terms and Conditions. It's dated July of this year, and it incorporates this new reporting cycle and due date. It also removes some language that before probably was a bit convoluted, but it was language that basically said if you got a new grant within 3 months of the due date, you're exempted from the annual report. Well, we no longer have that anymore, and now it's, you know, even for those shorter periods, you still have to submit those reports. So if you got a new grant on or about August 12th, going forward, that those new O&R grants would have that new reporting cycle. We do need to go back and modify existing O&R grants that had the old language. So we're starting shortly to go about modifying thousands of grants to update to the new government fiscal year reporting period and November 1st date, and just to make it clear that the June 15th due date has now been extended to November 1st. Okay, so next I wanted to talk about the DoD post-award delegation checklist. So as most of you know, for DoD, most DoD awarding offices don't do their own post-award administration. They would delegate to O&R regional offices for universities, or either to O&R or DCMA for other types of entities. For nonprofits, at least, DCMA and us share them, and then there's other types of entities that go to DCMA. So the issue has been that people ask for our services in many different ways, and it's, I guess, confusing to know exactly what they want. So the intent was to generate some kind of standard document where DoD awarding offices could ask for our services, and it would make it clear what we normally perform. And then, you know, when we get the form, it's clear what they're actually asking us to do and what they're not actually asking us to do. So this was a tool that was developed in the DoD Grant and Agreement Regulations Working Group, or the Dodgers Working Group. I think that was developed like a year or two ago, but we're starting to improve it. I've only seen it out in the wild, maybe less than a handful of times. We've actually gone to 2 of our DoD customers and tried to implement it on a broad awarding office level. That those discussions aren't completed yet, but you'll probably just seeing this document more in the future. And I just kind of wanted to give you a heads up on what it is, what the origins were. There will be a version of it, a fillable PDF uploaded on our website soon. So just in case you see it attached to your grant or reference, you'll know what it's for. The third topic was to mention that we're in the process of updating our internal closeout guidance, as well as our closeout metrics for next fiscal year and beyond. Historically, when we had closeouts, our regional offices, that's one of our main duties is closeout, and we would typically generate closeout goals that were just related to raw numbers, just based on the amount we think people could finish and what the workload was at the beginning of the year. But given the new uniform guidance requirement to generally close within a year of expiration, we're trying to merge our goals and metrics to conform with that. So in addition, we've updated our internal policies to make it easier for folks to comply with that, and to give directions on any kind of reporting, such as FAPIS reporting required to comply with the paragraph H of that uniform guidance closeout paragraph. Last thing I wanted to talk about was some personnel updates. In the last FDP meeting, Debbie Raffi announced her retirement. She retired back in July. Just found out that her replacement will be Mr. Jamie Thompson, who will serve as the next O&R Director of Contracts, Grants, and Acquisitions. He's currently the Senior Contracting Lead for the Marine Corps, as I guess his title is Assistant Deputy Commandant for Installations and Logistics and Contracts, and he's expected to start at O&R in October. Other announcements, just sort of remote work status type things. I'm not sure if or Debbie has announced this in the past, but earlier in the year, as many of you know, we have 5 O&R regional offices that do post-award administration, and our Seattle and Chicago offices, we've relinquished the physical office space. So those offices are fully remote now. Everyone's on a 100% remote work agreement, and they all work out of their homes. For our other 3 offices, we do intend in the near future to have the O&R Atlanta office. We intend for them also to relinquish their office space. Our current plan is to keep the office space in Boston, San Diego, but even with that in mind, the vast majority of those staff are going to be working 100% remote in the future as well. And I think Debbie announced back in January that our director of our engineering and systems review branch had retired back in December. Since that time, we've actually disestablished that branch, and the remaining personnel have been reassigned to other offices. And just my last little stat here is right now, 2/3 of our regional office staff have signed remote work agreements where they're working from home for now and the future. So that is all I have for you guys. Any questions?
Thanks, Wade. There is one question in the Q&A. It says, for existing awards, will O&R send the awardee AOR an updated award notice with the updated reporting cycle?
Yes, that is our intent. We're working through that right now to get the language right and to send it out to folks. In fact, somebody's trying to do a test run today through this system that's technically made for contract. It's a contract writing system. So it's going to be ugly with an SF30, which is a contract-oriented document, but it's a system that you can upload hundreds of awards or as many, more than one, to however many you want, and it'll automatically do mods for thousands of awards in a very automated function. So we're testing that system, which is on the PI website, if anyone, you all should know about that. So it's called MDO. We're trying a test of that today or tomorrow. And then if that goes well, we'll be rolling that out further where, yes, it'll have the new reporting cycle for all existing grants.
So we could look forward to thousands of modifications from O&R. Is that what you're saying? Yippee. About what time? When should we expect them to start rolling in?
Hopefully this month.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the counterpoint to that is, I guess you're all out of compliance, but it was our fault. So we're trying to make you not look out of compliance. It was our fault. So I guess that's why we feel like we need to, and this affects future reporting periods as well. So.
Great. Okay, well, I don't see any more questions. It's about 10 after 4, so I think we're going to be able to let everybody go, give you some time back. I just want to remind everybody to join us tomorrow at 10 Eastern time to hear our guest speakers be discussing the Ukrainian crisis and the effect it has on the research enterprise, both within Ukraine and internationally. So I hope to see you there. It's going to be a great session. And until then, have a great evening. And thanks for joining us today. It was great. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Just a quick note, it's 11 a.m. Eastern time is the start for tomorrow. Yeah. Okay.
Which is, I don't know what, 9, 8. Yes. Thank you. All right. Take care.